So for this question, they ask you to find 5 solutions to the equation. Now remember, everything that you have inside this section right here, that is all of the input. Those are the values that we want to go ahead and put in there for x. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first one. They're telling us that x is equal to -2. So I have y is equal to -1/2. This is my x value here. I'm going to replace that with a -2. And then it is +2. So all I've done is gone through and used my equation of a line and plugged in the -2 for my x value. So if I go through and solve this, this is just y is equal to -1/2 times, that's a -2/1. So all of this reduces and is equal to 1 plus 2. So that gives me my y value is equal to 3. Now, notice that what we're looking at over here is they're asking us to put that in as an ordered pair. This word is very, very important. What that means here is that when you put this in as an answer, you must put parenthesis, -2, comma, 3. And you must have the beginning, both parentheses and the comma, or it will be marked wrong. And again, that was for this first one that we did for -2. All right, let's go through and do the same thing again, but now we're going to go and look for b. So for b, what I'm looking at is x is equal to -1. So wherever I had x, I replace it with -1. And now I'm left with y is equal to -1/2 times -1 plus 2. Now I am left with a fraction here, so that is going to be -1/2 times 1. That turns it into a +1/2 plus 2. I need a common denominator, so I change that to, I do that by multiplying it by 2/2. So that leaves me with 1/2 plus 4/2, or 5/2. So to put that into the equation, again, I need to put my x value, my input, in first. My x value was -1, and my output, my y value, in this case, was equal to 5/2. And the last one that I'm going to do is when it's 0. So that's just a special case. That special case, remember, whenever you have 0, comma, c, that is your y-intercept. So that y-intercept, what is our y-intercept here? Our y-intercept is just 2. I get that, and I can show you that because it's just y is equal to -1/2 times 0. That's why that always goes away, plus 2. So my point for the next one would be when x is 0, 2. And that gives me my y-intercept. That's my slope is equal to mx plus b. Now, just be careful when you are graphing these, and I just see, I did not put my parenthesis here. That would have been marked wrong if I didn't end my parentheses. I want to talk about how we graph that one point, though, -1 5/2. To graph that, if you're going to go through and graph that, that's the same thing as -1 for my x value. And then 5/2 you have to turn into a decimal. 5/2 is equal to 2.5. So go in between those two values the best that you can to go through and make that point. All right, so when I'm looking at finding the slope of a line, I like to use pieces that are right in the crosshairs. So this is an exact point. I don't like this one so much because it's in the middle. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but this piece here looks really good. So again, I want to go through and use points that are exactly piece. All right, so that is the triangle that I'm going to go ahead and create. Now, I'm going to say this a lot, but if a line goes uphill, and again, as you are walking from left to right, it's positive. It's downhill, it is negative. So this slope of this line, because it's going downhill, the slope of this line I know has to be negative. All right, next piece is I count. Slope I know is going to be negative, and it's going to be the rise, which is the up and the down, over the run, like you would run on flat ground. So my slope in this case is negative rise, 1, 2, 3, over the run, which is 2. All right, so when we're looking at this, we want to write this in y equals form. So the idea that we need to do with this is we need to write this in terms of y is equal to mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. So I'm actually going to look at b, the y-intercept first, because my y-intercept is right here, so that means my b is equal to 4. Now, before we move on to the slope, just remember about how the slope of a line works. If it is going uphill as you go from left to right, it is a positive slope. Downhill, it is negative. If you're on flat ground, it is a 0 slope. And if it's straight up and down, the slope is undefined. Now, looking at that is kind of helpful because let's look at the triangle that this creates. And when I'm creating this triangle, I like to pick points that are exactly at the crosshairs. And by the crosshairs, I mean this and this. This point over here wouldn't work too well because it's not right on the crosshairs. I want to make a triangle that has those pieces. So I'm going to draw my triangle to my slope. And the slope is rise, which is up and down. And in this case, how many units do you have? So I have 2 units. And my run, which is my left or right, is 1, 2, 3 whole units. So my slope here is 2/3. So to input this into the y is equal to, it should be mx plus b, so it would be 2/3 as a fraction, x plus 4. Be careful when you're putting these in. Make sure that when you put them in, the x is being multiplied to it and not in the denominator. That's something that will happen. I also recommend watching the video for how to graph equations for my open math before you take your test. All right, so we want to find the slope given 2 points. Our slope is our change in y divided by our change in x, or y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. I always recommend labeling the points x1, y1, and x2, y2. So for this first one, I subtract my y values. So my slope is going to equal -9. And again with this, I am subtracting my y1, so that's minus and negative. I can make a little adjustment and know that I have this as a plus. And we're going to talk about this in a second. Something interesting happens with this. Now in the denominator, it is x2, which is 0 minus 2. So all of this here is equal to a 0 in the numerator divided by -2. Now a 0 over any number, my slope in this case just equals 0. But if we take a second and inspect this, you'll see that both of these y values are the same. So that means I know this is an equation that has where all of the y values are the same. So I also know the equation of this line is equal to y is equal to -9. And a y equal line is a flat slope. It's always going to be a horizontal line. Now, if I look at the part B, what do I have here? Again, I always label them x1, y1, x2, y2. I subtract my y values, -1 minus 3, all over 5 minus 5. Now with this one, I have -4 in the numerator, but 0 in the denominator. So this slope is undefined. It also means it's an x is equal to line with whatever my x value is, because this is saying my x value, no matter what, is always equal to the same thing. So this is just x is equal to 5. All right, the last one doesn't have any of those repeating values. If I look at them, so I just see that I don't have anything that's the same. So I'm just going to jump right in to my slope. And again, x1, y1, x2, y2. So I have my slope is equal to -3 minus 5 and 2 minus 1, or 8 over 1, or just -8. Again, I strongly recommend you watch how to graph in my Open Math, but right now we're just going to be talking about the algebra involved with this. Let's first look at my first equation, which is going to be y is equal to -1/9 minus 9. Now looking at that, I know that my y-intercept, or my b, is equal to -9. So I know I have a point right here. Now, unfortunately, with that slope being negative, it kind of makes makes graphing it difficult. So we're going to use the idea that we had before, is plugging a value in. I want to find out, I'm just picking a number. I'm going to pick some number. I can over here, I could pick a negative, but actually, we're going to go ahead and I am going to pick negative. I'm going to pick whatever this denominator is, because it's just going to make those denominators cancel out. So I'm going to choose -9. Let's see what happens. So I'm going to test the point. Y is equal to -1 over 9. I'm going to let x equal -9. That's what I'm saying here. So I'm starting my ordered pair. My x value is -9. And now I subtract 9. I want to multiply -1/9 times a +9. That leaves me with y is equal to, the 9's cancel and equal to 1. So that's just a +1 minus 9. So that gives me a y value of -8. So I have my second point, -9, -8, which is right there. And I can go ahead and draw this line. So I'm going to go through and use the second fraction. Now my second fraction also has a 9 in the denominator, so I'm going to use actually the same value. I'm going to use the same value I used last time. Last time in the other equation I used 9. I'm going to do the same thing here. So let's what happens when I plug -9 into this. So it's going to be y is equal to 14 over 9 times -9 plus 6. The 9's reduce into each other and equal -1. So that's going to be y is equal to -14 plus 6. -14 plus 6 is the same thing, it's -8. So it's a nice little coincidence. So I have that point, and also my y-intercept for this time is a +6. So this is the solution of the graph, and the solution set, how you would write that. And remember, always put the answer in as an ordered pair.